Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with The Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural law so that we might restore our American Republic. How scary is it to believe that we're the smartest beings in the universe, that our continued existence is in our own hands, that we could end the world with our behavior? And that is what it means to be godless, to have no belief that we are in the hands of an all-powerful and gracious God. If we believe we could kill off humanity by driving our cars, burning fossil fuels, heating our homes, there are too many people, too many cows, too many walls. Well, that's really what Marxism is all about. The Marxists must use scare tactics at every level of coercion because what they believe flies in the face of natural law, God's law. Marxism can't defeat capitalism, so it must paint capitalism in such a bad light that people would simply be ashamed of being capitalists. But before that, it must convince the capitalists to let them coexist long enough for the propaganda to capture a generation. The first of 45 steps toward Marxism begins with this, and I quote, that the U.S. would have acceptance of the coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. So we must coexist with the Marxists in order to prevent a global catastrophe. Well, they've kind of succeeded in that. But what's step number two? Well, that is to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Now, the word capitulate means to cease to resist an opponent or to surrender. And that is where we've been going for most of my lifetime. And this is what President Donald J. Trump is fighting to end. But in New York City has capitulated to Marxism. And our president is taking an interesting position, extending an olive branch to the new Marxist mayor, hopefully to be able to show at some point in the near future that Marxism will fail in New York City like it has failed throughout the world. Well, more on Marxism in the future, but for now, I'd like you to welcome our guest for this morning, Steve Shives. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
There you
Good.
go.
Thank you for having me on.
Great. Steve ran for House District 27 in the last election. But before we get too much into it, let's welcome Michael Levine. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen. So we have the we have the grassroots candidates for 26 and 27 neighboring House
There we
districts
go.
on the live stream today.
Yeah,
There
what
you
I'll
a
tell you,
go.
the state of Florida, in my opinion, the state of Florida would be a whole lot better off if I was serving in the Florida legislature and if Steve Shives was serving. So it's an honor to have Steve on with us today, Chuck.
Thank you,
That's
guys.
for sure. Well, Steve is owner of Runaway Campers LLC, and I was just wondering how you're doing in Trump's economy here, Steve.
Well, it's been a roller coaster ride for sure. The last couple of years have been an adjustment, because with our business, we manufacture and sell small camping trailers nationwide, and so when COVID hit, that was the one industry that just it felt the impact in a positive way because people were like, well, what are we going to do now? All the hotels are shut down. So, the only thing we can do is go camping. So, the RV industry, travel trailers, camping related, gear, all that kind of stuff kind of skyrocketed. The demand got crazy. And so that was the tail end of, the Trump economy through COVID and how we came through that. And it's since everybody just kind of overindulged in that period, then there was this huge adjustment now. And so we've been experiencing that over the last couple of years, but it's been there's factories and plants and that manufacture much larger, more expensive RVs than we do that have had to deal with that adjustment because people overbought, they overextended themselves. There's a lot of repos on the market now. So a lot of those things, change the dynamics of that industry.
I can
But
imagine.
for us, it's been good. It's been very steady.
Yeah, my wife and I have been camping for decades, and we moved right along in the progression. Ended up full timing in a 40-foot
Okay.
diesel pusher, but we got out just in time. We got out just before COVID hit. It was just amazing the
Right.
timing for us. So we're very excited for our time in the camping world, and so it sounds exciting that you would be helping so many families enjoy that part of
It is.
America's history. Um,
It's
so
a
having
fun
run
business.
yeah, having run for State House District 27, I noticed that you got the endorsement of the Republican Liberty Caucus and Florida Family Action. I think also a company group named Conservative Watch USA. Um,
Right.
that should have been a real boost to your campaign. And my first question is, well, was it?
Right. I think so. I mean, it was a big honor to be endorsed by all of those organizations because um, they're very true to my core and my beliefs and everything. And so hindsight looking back, I think those were endorsements that really meant more to me than anything else. Um, Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that in the general public that are voters that are still not familiar with a lot of those organizations, and so you have to kind of promote and campaign on a different wavelength to get the message across to those people of how important these organizations are to our state, which was exciting for me. I enjoyed that part of it. So I think it helped, but in a lot of ways, there's a lot of things that affected my campaign that went outside of those endorsements.
Yeah, for instance, how do you feel you were portrayed by your opponents? What was the dividing line there between you and them? And was it just one or two?
We had three of us in the race.
Three, yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, it was a very interesting race, and our ultimately the rep in this district now is Richard Gentry. He came into the race as a lobbyist for over four decades in Tallahassee, and so his connections ran really deep in you know I mean, let's face it, he was familiar with, knew on a first name basis most of the state reps and senators for the last 20 terms. So, there was just a lot of connection there that I think um, pushed it pushed a lot of the support and the endorsements and things like that in his direction because I don't think anybody is willing to hardly rock the boat up there.
I
I
mean,
think it's a little deeper than that, actually.
Yeah,
endorsements. I mean, obviously,
So
these
don't
people in the
forget that it's a primary.
right.
Steve was running in a
Yeah,
primary just like I was. And keep in mind, I mean, even voter turnout, Chuck and I went door to door, knocked on thousands of doors.
right.
And I believe that most of those voters just didn't show up. I mean,
Yeah,
they were telling us that they were enthusiastic about our campaign, et cetera. But if they don't show up and vote, and that's what's going on, like my friend Maria Zach is running in a special election right now. She won the Republican primary. She's going into December 9th as a general. And if Republicans don't turn out, they miss an opportunity to flip a blue seat red. But the fact of the matter is that most Republicans won't turn out,
hmm,
Chuck.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and that of course, we can't look at the government and blame them by any means. Um, uh, but did you have a lot of negative press out there, Steve?
So that was the thing that probably disappointed me. We talk about election integrity and very often overlook the idea of campaign integrity. That so many of these races, especially when they're being funded from so many big PACs, they have the means, the resources, and at the end of the day, they want to win and they don't care who they step on to to make that happen. And so there was a lot of negativity in my campaign. I've got a stack, a notebook full of negative mailers that went out, 17 negative attack mailers on me. Along with, in addition to that, was negative attack ads on Fox News, radio commercials. They spent over $250,000 attacking me when it was all said and done. Spent more money attacking me than they did on my opponent's actual campaign. And and all that money just comes in from these big, huge PACs. So I'm flattered that I was such a threat.
You were a threat.
Yeah, I believe that. They knew it. They knew it. They did not want me.
Look, they knew exactly what they were getting when they got Richard Gentry.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that they had somebody there who would do what the governor wants to do, the Speaker of the House wants to do. And of course, the President of the Senate has his own agenda with his own team. So Steve Shives was a question mark at best for them. They knew that you would stand up to them when the interests of your constituents were not being represented in Tallahassee. Right. And they want the path of least resistance. Yep. They want to get what they want done, and they want it to be easy. And they certainly don't want, well, I won't speak for you, but flamethrowers like me standing in front of a camera talking about the evil things that are going on in Tallahassee, Florida. And ladies and gentlemen, I know that's bombastic, but I'm saying to you that when you price people out of housing based on legislative initiatives in Tallahassee, that's evil in my book. Yeah. When you make it where people can't afford housing, electricity, water, groceries, insurance for their cars themselves, but that's another story. That's evil. You're hurting people. And I'm saying to you that, like I've said so many times, I believe you've got to be at around the 70%, the top 30% household income family in Florida in order to be able to afford to live in Florida.
Oh, Chuck. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're it's on its way. So, we're going to see that crunch come again.
For sure.
So in my view, that's evil.
And I would have to kind of concur that Mike can be a kind of a flamethrower kind of guy. He wants to make sure that the real issue is being discussed. But learning about you over these last couple of years as I've listened to you talk and actually gone onto your website, your Christian faith seems to be far more important to you than throwing darts. Do you feel
Sure.
that caused you also to be a target in this?
It's possible. It's possible because people that don't, there's a lot of people that call themselves Christians. Let's face it, but there's not a lot of people that that live that to such an extent that it is the most important factor in their life, and so people that don't live that, they don't understand it. It becomes a threat because they just don't understand it, and so some of the attacks were that way. I mean, I pastored a church in South Carolina for 11 years, and one of the attacks that was used against me had to do with my pastorate there and the way they twisted and turned things around to to make me into this monster, and and none of it was even remotely true. But boy, they are very crafty at developing their attacks. So it made the campaign very interesting.
Yeah, I'm
and
sure.
There just doesn't seem to be recourse, right, Steve?
Well, that's it. I mean, we went through the whole thing of filing suit and that, defamation cases, sending the claim and the report to the Florida Elections Commission, and and the response just comes back as, for lack of a better phrase, that's just politics. And and I think to myself, I mean, I have 4 pillars that I stand on every single day of my life: faith, integrity, relationships, and purpose. And I want to be a man of faith and integrity that values relationships and lives with purpose. And, and we want to elect those kind of people into office to represent the majority of the people. They're threatened by that. But yet, we talk about election integrity. What does that word even mean to most of the political world? There's no integrity there. It's just, we want to win we want to win that seat. So it's a challenge.
And there's so much money in it. It's amazing, right? I mean, there's just so much money in it. And that's really, I mean, access to capital. That's really what we're talking about here. Yeah. So I'm just going to say to you, just because we're talking here and we have a similar experience in the 24 election cycle, that faith, integrity, relationships, and purpose, that's the reason I'm a flamethrower.
Right.
Okay. Because I can't sit back and watch it and allow it without resistance. It's just not in my DNA. I won't do it. I've tried. I can't do it.
Right.
So Chuck, get us rolling back on track here.
Okay, well, that's fine. We're talking about, we've been talking pretty regular about developers here in Florida. I was wondering what your thoughts, the influence developers have in state government, and where is that taking us here in Lake County and in your area up there?
Well, that's one thing. Real estate drives the economy in the state of Florida. I mean, there's some states that are different than that, but everything that we do in our economy is hinges on real estate in some way or another, whether it's housing, whether it's commercial developments, whether it's bringing big business into our communities. And I experienced that that threat, or I should say, I guess I posed a threat to that side of the industry, where local developers they had the impression that I was against development, and I guess the bottom line is I'm not against development. I think that growth is inevitable. When you have a state like Florida, it's going to continue to grow. More and more people are going to continue to come here. And so to be anti-development doesn't make any sense. But it also doesn't mean we can just do it any old way we choose and think that you can just keep cramming more and more people into an area without it affecting our infrastructure and our budgets and our local governments and everything. And so I think early on a lot of them, the developers, got behind my opponent because he literally lobbied for the Florida Home Builders Association for over 20 years. And so when he stepped into the race, it was as if, well, hey, Steve Shives, we're not so sure about, but this guy, we've got him in our pocket. So, that became very apparent to me on the local campaigning level when I started finding I was being shunned by certain individuals, that many of them that I've known personally for decades in this community, and all of a sudden wouldn't give me the time of day because they had sided over to the sure thing for the developer's sake. And locally, I could see how that was having an impact on state government.
Well, just so, if you don't mind, I'll jump on the back of that. And I'm in the real estate business, and I had some relationships with some developers, and they literally sat me down over lunch and just asked me, they said, will you sign off on absolute unlimited density in Florida with overriding the city councils and the county commissions, right? That's this, and they are, I mean, you talk about euphoria. These guys are, I mean, it's like a child under a Christmas tree. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone, by the way. Here we are, we're in Thanksgiving week, right? So yeah, these guys were just licking their chops, right? Because the amount of money that they make when they start packing higher and higher density on an acre of land is unbelievable.
Right.
And that's what they're after. So when they sit you down over lunch and tell you and ask you, will you support unlimited density with no oversight of the county commission of the city council, that I just can't answer that question affirmatively.
Right, right.
And
Yeah,
that's what they want, and that's what they're getting.
sure. And in their minds, well, you're in real estate. It should be an easy sell. But it's just the whole thing is driven by so much greed. It's just sickening.
And there are ways to do it. And this is another situation where the planning process is just not creative at all. We're doing the same things we've always done for decades and decades, and it's not working. And can you believe? I mean, I find it to be, let's just use the word surprising, that nobody, like for example, the idea that you update your comprehensive plan every 10 years. Well, the way Florida's growing, 10 years just isn't enough. So nobody stepped up to the plate and said, you know what, we need to be developing our comprehensive plan every 2 years or work. And if you do that, you got to work on it every month, because in order to have it ready 2 years from now, you got to work on it every month. And then developing parcels in larger parcels of land so that you can integrate various different density levels within a project, like a sector plan or something similar to that. But, nobody seems to come up with creative solutions to this problem. Tallahassee just jams it down your throat, from the legislature and from the governor's mansion.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck?
So just moving right along. We talked a little bit earlier about term limits at the local levels. How do you feel, Steve, that term limits at the local levels could change the game there, the political game here, in particular Lake County?
Sure. Yeah, for Lake County, Marion County,
Yeah.
our district went Lake or parts of Lake, Marion, and Volusia County. So campaigning in all three counties, I'm seeing the same things. There, in cities or areas where they don't have term limits on their local officials, there's people who's been in there for 20 years. And,
Yep.
and then I'm looking and starting to put the pieces together, because I've never really been involved in politics up to that point. So yeah, it's interesting.
So the fact is, though, I mean, this is the difference between a charter county versus a not a charter county, right, Steve? You're familiar with
Right.
that concept?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Have you looked into, do you have comments or thoughts on the pros and cons of charter versus non-charter?
No, I mean, I haven't, developed a personal view on that, but I'm looking at local elections getting ready to take place next year, thinking to myself, in the countywide elections, some of these guys, and they're not even bad people, but some of them just need to go
I agree.
and bring new blood in.
Right. Well, the interesting thing there too, because this is a systematic, because people don't really understand that these systems were put in place a long time ago for a very specific reason. So in Lake County, county commissioners are elected at large. So that means that if you're running in a district, everyone in the county votes in your district on your election from that district. Well, that is done specifically to make it expensive to run. The reason that Lake County is not a charter county is that's one of the reasons that Lake County is not a charter county, because that means if you had a charter, then you could say that commission races are exclusive to the district, and that would make it 1/5 as expensive to run, right? But that's not how the stakeholders want it. The stakeholders want it to be expensive to run. So we don't want a charter because we don't want term limits. We want to establish salaries based on the state formula, not something that locals would impose. And we want it to be expensive to run so that Johnny Lunchbucket has a really hard time getting elected, Chuck.
Sure.
Yeah, well, we've talked about several things here this morning, and some of the things we haven't talked about is some of the insanity that we're getting out of our government here in Florida, with millions of acres being purchased for solar panels and solar farms, just raising the cost of production of electricity at the expense of the average person. We have all these PACs that are bringing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and and along around the entire state, millions of dollars of dark money affecting local communities in our elections. Yeah, you talked about. I forgot what the number you put out as far as the amount of money that was actually utilized to defame you,
Right.
even
Quarter
more
million.
than bring the positive aspects of your candidate to so I guess our final question for this morning is, none of this makes sense, and so does common sense. Is common sense even possible in our government?
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
Man, you know, I ran my campaign. My campaign slogan was "It's time for a regular guy," and you know, I really believe that the common sense approach has been lost so much, and the general public looks back and we hear it all the time when we're sitting on the front porch talking politics. Well, how could they do that? Or boy, that's just really stupid. You know, they don't. Of course, they're not looking at all the behind the scenes backroom deals being made. But you know, common sense in government has been lost because it's not run by the majority of the people. And you know, I ran on that campaign. I ran on, hey, you know, I'm just a regular guy, and I've lived according to common sense principles my entire life. I mean, 2 hours before, 2 hours ago, I was right down the street doing renovations on a business building that we're going to be moving into very soon, and you know, and that's just what I do. I've been blue collar all my life. I work with my hands. I enjoy working with my hands, seeing the fruits of my labor, and things. And so much of what you do when you work and live in that environment and that understanding of life is just based on common sense. Common sense says you just don't spend money that you don't have. Well, but we've lost that. You know, common sense principles say, well, if you own your home, why should you have to continue to pay the government taxes every year to continue to own your own home? So you know, it's just common sense principles that need to be restored. So many things. My dream, if I was to be elected, was to become known as the repeal king. That let's get in there and let's start deregulating. Let's start removing. We have so many thousands and thousands of regulations in this state that many of them have just been ignored. They've been shoved into a drawer. And well, you know, we passed this 50 years ago. We don't need to revisit it. And you know, instead of just simplifying life for our citizens. So yeah, it's a challenge, and you know, I would hope that we can just press forward and try to start electing some regular guys and some regular gals, getting real people in our state house and making a difference and representing real people.
Excellent, excellent. Mike,
Yeah. So again, I was talking to the Florida Chamber in Tallahassee when we were running, and they, you know, one of my answers to their question was, I said, well, it depends on who you govern for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you know, I found that to be a very interesting interview because I really found I refused to interview with the Florida Chamber 3 times, and I was shocked that they were that interested in talking to me, to be honest.
Right.
And eventually they persuaded me to interview. So I went up to Tallahassee, and I was really surprised at how interested they were about what I had to say on many issues. But one thing that really kind of felt a little spirit in the room was when we just started talking about, well, who do we actually govern for? And for me, I govern for the working people of the state. My philosophy is when you can live on a median household income in the state of Florida and educate your kids and save for retirement and do all the things you have to do, then the job is done. And of course, people with more money benefit from that because the cost of living is reduced to a number that median household income families can afford. So every rising tides lifts all ships. And, you know, it was interesting to kind of get these. And, you know, keep in mind, if you're interviewing candidates for the Florida Chamber of Commerce, you're a pretty big deal in the state, because you don't
Right.
get to do that if you don't have a very high standing with the chamber. And keep in mind, every other special interest group's the same way. But I found, to be honest, I was really surprised at how intent and how authentic they actually were. And there was well over the room was set for about 200. Did you interview with them, Steve?
I did. Yeah, it was very
So
interesting.
did you interview in Tampa or Tallahassee?
I interviewed in Orlando.
Orlando. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I interviewed in Tallahassee, and the room was set for a couple of hundred people.
Right.
And when I walked into the room, there's a guy escorting me over to the chair and the microphone. And I'm walking in the room saying, am I going to go like table to table here? What am I going to do here? No, Mr. Levine, you're going to sit right here in front of these 200 people or 100 people, whatever it was, and you're going to speak into that little tiny microphone from that little tiny chair.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And of course, I don't want to get into me because it's not about me today, but for a moment I was a little intimidated, and then I decided to turn that around and use that dynamic to my advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just like,
So it was
I'm
fun.
just going to relax. I'm just going to relax and have a good time with this.
That's what I did
going
too.
to like
Yeah.
me or not. And,
Exactly.
Yeah,
But the
well,
point is that who do we govern for? And for
Right.
me and you, I believe we govern for the everyday person living in this state.
Right. And I think they saw that. And
Yeah.
and as much as they may even respect that, they're ultimately going to do what benefits, the
yeah.
bigger organization.
Yeah, well,
Okay, Chuck.
President Trump is one of those people that has utilizes a good amount of common sense in his governance, and it would be interesting for the Republican Party to take note. We are out of time, and so what I'm going to do is give Mike and then Steve just a minute to make some closing remarks. So, Mike, take it away.
Okay. What I'd like to leave viewers with today is that I'm working on a program where we can live stream from all 67 counties in Florida with the objective of building relatively small teams to analyze the legislation that the legislative delegation from each county is sponsoring, and to kind of get a handle on where each county's legislative delegation is taking us. So I just want to encourage you, if you're watching this and you're an influencer or you're an activist, which I would assume most people are, I really would like for you to contact me so that we can establish a team of influencers in every single county so that we can have a stronger voice in the legislature. And so I'd really like to talk to anyone who's interested in pursuing that with me, if you'd contact me about that. Thank you, Chuck.
And
right.
Steve, just a
Sure.
final remark.
Okay, well, I'll kind of piggyback off of that a little bit, Mike, because, in the experience of campaigning and everything, I said I would never get involved in politics. I was very hesitant to even put my name out there to start with. I don't have any regrets by it, and what I can say is that through the process, I learned a lot. I made a lot of connections, met a lot of great people along the way, both of you included. That that has given me an opportunity that even though you're not elected, you still have a voice, and to encourage people to think, well, just because I'm not a politician or I don't want to run for office doesn't mean that you can't make a difference. It doesn't mean that you can't have a say or influence things in a positive way. And so we've got to get involved in any way that we can. Opportunities have come my way since then. People ask what I'm going to run for next. I'm not making any promises I'm going to run for anything, but I will be involved and do things and go to commission meetings and stand up and speak on behalf of people that maybe don't know how to argue their case or their problem. Get involved in your local school board and do things that make a difference. And in hindsight, you're not going to regret it.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mike, and thank you all again for tuning in to our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic ROAR. Please like and share the program. And remember, if you are unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And God bless America.